Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 2. I hope you have all found the time to look through your PowerPoint and complete the activities for the session, and you're ready to share your insights. So there were a few clips that you had to watch. So it depended on whether you were early childhood, primary or secondary as to those that you needed to have a look at. I thought that pre-watching the clips rather than doing it online would be a better idea. It would give us more time, I hope, to spend time on discussion, which is why we're here, which is really important, because this unit, it's all about developing your own beliefs about practice. So developing those insights into what you think a teacher is. And I guess for some of you, to make that big decision about, is this really what you want to do? Okay, so I've got a couple of students still trying to sort out their cameras. That's fine, not a problem. So just making sure everyone has their microphones muted at this point. But at any time, if you want to interrupt me or you want to ask a question, just unmute. Please don't be afraid to interrupt me. Okay, so as a preparation activity for the lecture and also for the workshop, you were asked to complete the fishbone template. So it was around thinking about the different actions that a teacher might do in each of the categories from the Queensland Government site that we outlined. So what teachers do. So you needed to formulate 4 to 5 actions in each category on the fishbone to the line below that heading that you can see on the slide. So the fishbone, this template, is yet another example of a graphic organizer that you possibly might want to use for your assessment task. Doesn't suit me. I guess one of the things that I don't like about it is there isn't a lot of room. When I filled mine out, I had difficulty, you can only write 1 or 2 words. So for me, it wasn't really ideal. So it was suggested in completing the fishbone template that you used your textbooks as stimulus to find out about teacher actions. And we suggested that you do this as a way to get started using your textbook. So using the headings as a guide, subheadings, and also the index as a guide as well. So who is going to share what teacher actions they added to a category? It doesn't have to be all of them. You could just possibly share one specific category that you felt that you knew the most about. You can also type it into the chat if you wanted to, but now is the time to share those insights. So who's going to go first? So unmute your mic and speak now. Okay, can I have a thumbs up for those of you who have completed the task, please? Okay, all right. It's not a lot of students. I'm hoping that some of you can't find the thumbs up reaction. All right. So remembering you have to be prepared when you come online to participate. So what about Jake?
I can go if you like. Sorry.
Who was that?
I was going to say I can go if you like. I can say some.
Yeah, definitely.
So for assess and report, I had quite a few. Assess student learning, provide feedback, interpret student data, rubric, report cards, and like equitable accommodations for people who might have disabilities, and just general ones like informal assessments, diagnostics, monitoring and record keeping, things like that.
Fabulous. That's great. Any for any other sections? Nikki? Is it Nikki that's
Yeah,
yeah.
that's that. Yeah, I can go to lead lessons if you like.
Please do.
Yeah. Manage classroom activities, behaviour management, and connecting with students and building relationships, motivating students and student participation.
Fabulous. Did you have anything for develop materials?
Actually, had difficulty telling the difference between develop materials and plan and prepare learning. So I wasn't sure if like develop materials was like including ICT and just a range of resources to engage students.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess depending on whether you're early childhood and primary or secondary, you are really thinking about how you're going to engage the students. So that might be developing, using materials that are engaging, using a variety of materials, so multimodal, making sure that the materials that you use are appropriate to all learners, those sorts of things. What about liaise with others? Can we have someone else? Thank you so much, Nikki. Thank you for jumping in first. Well done. Someone else now?
I can do that one if you want.
Please do. Liaise with others. What did you have?
Where is it? I said things like complete like their professional development, meet with other teachers, work with the students' parents, work collaborative with other classes, and then work with their teacher aides.
Excellent. Fabulous. Well done. I think someone's actually posted their fishbone into the so was this someone, Karen, did you not have access to the fishbone template? Okay, so the fishbone was on Blackboard and it was part of your pre-workshop activities that you needed to do. Thank you very much for sharing that. Okay, so I think I did I followed the instructions on Blackboard as they suggested and used the textbook as a stimulus. And these were some of the things that I quickly came up with. I'll give you an opportunity to have a look. So these were the actions that I thought were quite important to me, I guess. So in terms of developed materials, you know, my thoughts were that a teacher action would be to make sure that they're age appropriate, that they were engaging, fun, motivating, and also catering for our diverse learners. What's something that you can see across all of those categories that is important in terms of a teacher action? Anyone?
You've written evaluate in nearly every single one of your criteria.
I have. I think evaluate is extremely important. It's a vital teacher action. So across all areas, so teaching the curriculum, evaluating that, evaluating your goals as well, evaluate how you lead and plan lessons, how you assess and report, how you develop materials. You know, are those materials motivating? Are they fun? Do they engage student? Are they equitable? And of course, liaising with parents, liaising with your colleagues, giving and receiving feedback, evaluating how you use theory to support your practice, evaluating things even like your communication skills. So how are you communicating with parents and students? Are you focusing on individual children rather than just the whole group? So evaluation for me, I think sits you know, right there as one of a very, very important teacher action. What do you think about that? Would you agree? Yeah. Excellent. So I have added this to your to Blackboard for your reference, and that will become available towards the end of the week when everyone has had the chance to finish their own. I just thought it might help. For those of you who are a bit unsure what the task involved, I just thought breaking it down might assist you. Of course, that's just my thoughts. You know, there are many others. Nikki had some wonderful suggestions there that she shared. Well done. Okay, so moving on. So in the lecture, for those of you that had the opportunity to either live stream or to watch the recording, everyone shared a meme with their partner. So hopefully you've got your meme here today. They also discussed where it might sit on the fishbone template. And through doing this activity, we discovered that a lot of the memes out there relate to teacher as practitioner. So I don't want you to miss out on this lovely opportunity to share. So I'm going to divide you into breakout partners, and I want you to share your meme, and I want you to see if you can work out where it might sit on the fishbone template. So if we have a look, my chosen meme would sit in the plan and prepare learning programs. So it's to do with group work. So I want you to take a shot of the screen, ready to complete the 3 tasks in your breakout group with a partner. So those of you that are watching the recording, you can pause and do the same. So the meme that you've chosen, see if you can relate it to the fishbone template. So I'll give you one more chance to take a shot of the screen. Yep, all good. So we're looking at how your chosen meme can fit in those areas, or it might fit across multiple areas. So we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to create breakout groups. So there'll be 2 to 3 participants. Okay, everyone ready to go? Thumbs up. All ready to share in your breakout group? Beautiful. I'll call you back when it's ready to time to finish up. Okay, so for those of you who are watching the recording, I am going to pause and I want you to do the same. I want you to think about how the meme that you chose can fit onto that fishbone template under those categories. See you soon. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We've still got a few people in breakout rooms. How did everyone go? Good. Any comments? How did some of you who possibly hadn't done the exercise may have been able to think about it and reflect while they were there? Any good memes that you had shared? Okay, we'll just wait until everyone's come back. We've got 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Okay. All right, welcome back, everyone. So hopefully you would have had the opportunity to see where your meme sat in that fishbone. So what category did you place your meme in? You can chat, you can type it in the chat box, or you can unmute your mic.
I'll go.
Yep.
I'm not sure if you can see or if that's very clear, but popped that one under liaising with others primarily.
Okay.
I think the multitasking that teachers have to do.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, collaborating and communicating everywhere by the looks of things.
That's a big one. Yeah, so a lot of people have typed in liaise with others, assess and report. So yeah, I guess some of them may have gone across a few of the categories or responsibilities. And for some of you, it may have been hard to fit the meme into a category. Did any of you find that? I guess in some ways, this is because, you know, the memes generally are quite unrealistic in terms of representations of teachers, or, you know, basically they have fairly minimal depth because they are memes. So don't feel bad if you couldn't fit that into the fishbone template. So what I might suggest that you do is, to assist you with your assessment task and just with your general understanding of teacher as practitioner, as we go through the workshop and discuss the clips that you would have watched, I want you to think about what teacher actions you could add to your fishbone template. So keep adding those actions as you go. So have it there to the side so you can add teacher actions divided into those particular categories. Any questions before we move on? Or anyone else wanted to share anything about where they put their meme? Okay, so we're going to look at observation now. So when you go out on your placement, you're going to be observed and evaluated by your supervising teacher. You're also going to carefully observe and evaluate your supervising teacher's practices and approaches. And also, as a practicing teacher, you're going to be involved in peer observation. Some of you may be familiar with this already, possibly in your previous roles or jobs, or even as a student, being observed or observing others. Research supports that peer observation helps teachers to build their capability. And importantly, it's about developing a shared understanding of effective practice in a learning environment. So this is across all learning contexts. Again, we're coming back to our community of practice. So an inquiry-based learning culture where you're working together to share your understandings and your perspectives. So peer observation, it allows teachers to build their skills in giving and also receiving feedback. And this, I don't know about you guys, but well, receiving feedback can be quite difficult, especially if it's not what you expected. But giving feedback can also be quite difficult as well, because, you know, generally we don't want to hurt people's feelings, do we? And in a situation where I guess you've put a lot of effort, a lot of work into your teaching, into your planning, you have, you know, it's close to your heart. So, you know, your feedback that you give and the feedback that you receive hopefully is very constructive. So I guess from your experience, I want you to think about some protocols that we might need to consider when observing teachers. So picture yourself in your placement and you're observing your supervising teacher, what sort of things would you need to consider? Okay, I'm going to start asking particular students because we're not getting the responses that I like. Okay, Emma Hilton, what are your thoughts if you're being observed on, if you're observing your supervising teacher on placement, what sort of things do you need to consider? What protocols? Any thoughts?
I think definitely, like, as in, don't be disruptive, would be a huge one. Sit and watch.
Yeah.
Refrain from intervening, refrain from offering, hold your questions back until a more appropriate time.
Excellent.
On the right
Very
path.
good. Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Emma. What about you, Karen?
Okay, so I think when we're observing teachers, we need to consider their pedagogies. So how teacher use what kind of method to talk with children, and how to teach their knowledge and combine this knowledge with the particular technologies.
Okay. So that's a good point, Karen. So I guess you would be thinking about what you're going to observe. So looking at the environment, it's very, very important that you have a specific focus when you're observing, because if you say, I'm just going to observe everything, it becomes a muddle. It helps if you have a very specific focus. So from Crystal, we've got make note of the teacher's methods and teaching style. That's a very important focus. And Ben says, observe their behavior, methods of teaching, and how they interact with their students. Excellent. Teachers' methods when dealing with students' behavior, all very, very important. But we also need to think about making sure that we're respectful, and I guess if we're in a teaching situation as opposed to a student, we would also need to be thinking about a trusting and supportive environment as well. So respectful language, and very importantly, stating what you see and what you hear. So in observation, we can't be judgmental. It's about what you see and what you hear. And again, it helps if you have a very specific focus. Thank you for those contributions. So we have teaching examples in the PowerPoint that you needed to view from early childhood and primary and secondary. So I asked you to just watch the ones from your cohort, but we're actually going to discuss all of them. So I'll ask those from primary and early childhood to discuss the actions that they saw, and secondary to discuss theirs. This is really going to benefit all cohorts. As pre-service teachers, it's really important that you have a very good understanding of where your learners are coming from and going to. And I guess the roles and responsibilities across all of those cohorts. So if you're watching the recording, I want you to pause now and watch the clip that you can access in our Blackboard Zoom preparation PowerPoint. So you need to watch and note down 8 actions that you observed in the clip. So our primary and early childhood teachers here today, what were some of the actions that you noted? So you had to note down, doesn't have to be 8, could be 1. 1 would be fine.
I noticed that the teacher had the students kind of walk together on it.
Yeah.
And also they had to like figure out the like although the teacher was there like helping them, the students were still kind of figuring it out on their own.
Yeah, so she encouraged them to be independent. That's a really, really good observation. So we all thank you very much for that. We also had, she cared about their safety, so encouraging them to put the scissors down, watching for hazards, those sorts of things, really important. Anything else that anyone would like to add? Thumbs up if you're in early childhood and primary. Okay, Joey, any thoughts from the clip? Nope. Okay. Some of the things that I noticed in particular, I think is that although she is a, thanks Crystal, questioning, asking the students which step would be first. Excellent. So this lovely pre-service teacher, so she's fairly early on in her teacher training, but she was really using differentiation. So differentiation is when we look at the needs and strengths of our individual students. This is really important in early childhood and primary, but just as significant in secondary as well. So she was very encouraging. One of the students, I think, she said, do you want to have a go or someone else to have a turn? So really encouraging. She used open-ended questions and also leading questions. She had the procedural steps. Yep, so her Molly says her language choices were specific to working with young children, so age appropriate. Very, very good observation, Molly. She gave directions on the go rather than a list of instructions at first. Yep, and she asked students which steps would go first. That's fantastic. So in doing this, she would be looking at the students' prior knowledge, and this is really important. So looking at prior knowledge and then going through what we are going to learn, what we want to actually achieve, so the objectives. And she also used a small group focus as well, so a focus on individual students as opposed to the larger group, so you can target specific students and help them in these smaller groups. Another thing that I noticed as well is what we refer to over shoulder marking. So she was viewing students' work and viewing what they were doing. So making sure that they were using their finger and making sure they were following the directions. Excellent. So hopefully, if you didn't get the opportunity to watch the clip, I would suggest that, well, as we go through, you note down some of these because we're going to discuss them a little bit later when we draw up our final graphic organizer. So the next stimulus was one for our secondary students. So if you're watching the recording, again, pause and watch. It was from a graduate science teacher. So secondary students, you were asked to note down 8 practices or actions. What did you note?
I put down that she engaged with the class a lot with like hand gestures and questions and like asking them like questions where they can answer yes or no to as well.
Yes,
And
I
then
noticed that too. Yeah, that's good. It's leading
Yeah.
questions. Yeah, because if, you got a 50% chance of getting it
Yeah.
right, haven't you, Alyssa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she would also present like visual representations up on the board by drawing figures as well.
Yeah, so the students were able to contribute. So through the
Yeah.
use of that electronic whiteboard. And what about when she took them outside? What do you think?
well, prior to that, she like described the lesson objectives, what they were gonna do, what activities they were gonna do, like measuring the whatever it was about the water.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
And then afterwards they just like shared their results, and yeah, I can't remember what happened after.
You can't remember? No, that's
No.
really good. Thank you, Alyssa. That was fantastic. So we got use practical activities to engage the class. The teacher included and engaged the class through questions and practicals. So real world situations, taking them outside of the so-called classroom, as we talked about in the lecture. So a learning environment. So getting them out there, and it's about practical application of what she was talking about in the class. And again, referring to prior knowledge as well. So we've got from Claire, shared learning so students could compare, ensure everyone was on the same page and no one was confused, which is really important. So before moving on to the next task or topic, making sure that everyone has a good understanding of what they're meant to be doing. Well done. So again, jotting down some notes as we go about specific activities, teacher actions. And even if it's the area is not relevant to you, I think it's an important exercise. Anyone else want to share before we move on? No? Excellent. Thank you for sharing. So the next one was back to our early childhood and primary, and here we have a lesson plan. So this was a pre-service teacher in a year 1 placement. Again, if you're watching the Zoom, if you're watching the recording, pause now and have a good look at the lesson plan, noting down as many practices and purposeful actions that were outlined by the teacher. So this is a very detailed and considered plan. As we can note, it is phase 1. So often lesson plans are in stages or phases, and they generally have 3, sometimes 4, and depending on the age group, it could go for up to 70 minutes or 40 minutes possibly. So this is the first 20 minutes that this teacher has planned for. So what were some of the purposeful actions that you can see in the plan?
Well, I had that she was making the alterations to suit individual students.
Mhm.
So when it's talking about Sam has ASD and requires a teacher aide, and the iPads will be needed to meet the needs of Kelly and John.
Excellent.
And
so
then,
differentiating. Yeah, very good.
for
Yeah.
each student.
Yeah.
And she also used very engaging activities to help students to look at the surroundings and see it from a practical view as well.
Yeah. So when you say engaging activities, what would you?
Yeah, so when she was talking about the I Spy and taking where she changes, like she'll take off a necklace or her glasses or something, she changes to see if they'll notice and get them to take in their surroundings.
Excellent. A really good observation. So things I guess that, again, real world situations that the students can take notice of. Thank you very much. That was some really good contributions. So we've got identifying learning objectives. Yeah. Like the first one that we looked at and the second as well, making sure that those learning objectives are front and center. So, and I guess the learning objectives too, in this case, we can see that they relate to the curriculum focus as well. Anything else to add? Primary students, early childhood students? One more, come on. Asking a student to demonstrate how to use the devices based off learning from the prior lesson. Excellent. Do we have a template for this plan? No, Ben, not at this point. We're not getting into templates just yet. Hold on. That will come, believe me. But, this is looking at the template. It's fairly standard sort of template. If you are wanting to look specifically at templates, you can email me and I'm happy to send you one. But at this point, then we're just more focusing on generally rather than specific templates. Does that answer your question, Ben? Yeah, used multiple stimuli, dress ups, writing on the board, I Spy, digital technologies. So multimodal. So digital cameras, iPads, all sorts of things. And that it's engaging and it's fun as well for the students. Yeah, so I also had discuss, recall and practice. So there was some of the strategies, using open-ended questioning and outdoor application again as well. So that real world application and links to prior knowledge. And as well as specific objectives, as you noted, there was a focus on the key vocabulary as well. So the vocabulary that she wanted to introduce, or possibly they may have introduced it previously and wanted to introduce it again. So lots and lots of different purposeful and very well thought out strategies. So if we look, that's just for 20 minutes. So lesson plans are very, very detailed, as in this one, especially when you're on placement or as a beginning teacher. Obviously, as you have more experience, they would be less detailed probably, but still the more detail you have, the easier it's going to be in terms of, knowing what you're going to do. And the most frustrating thing as well is you may have all of this planned out, but if something changes or the students that you're differentiating for aren't there, or your resources fail, your materials fail, you can't find the digital cameras, or you forgot the SD cards, all of these sorts of things, you need to be able to be flexible and adaptable. So lesson plans don't always go to plan. So it's something that you really need to consider as a teacher. In my face-to-face class, for example, this week, one of the clips wouldn't work. So I just had to go with 2 stimuli, but we made it work. And I used it as an example. I should have checked that clip before class. So very important that you're adaptable, because things aren't always going to go smoothly. That's what makes teaching so exciting. All right, our next stimulus was our secondary lesson plans. So again, watching the Zoom session, if you could pause and have a look. So those of you who are here now in secondary, what teacher actions, what purposeful actions did you note? Come on, you should be warmed up by now.
Well, she starts up with determining the current skill level by asking open-ended questions to the class about the topic.
Yeah, so looking at prior knowledge, very important. So knowing what to move forward with. With prior to this, he or she would have looked at, I guess, the data, assessment data, and would have a fairly good understanding of the student's prior knowledge, but this also helps as well. Excellent. Anything else?
They took note that a student had been away for 2 weeks, so they planned on catching them up as well.
Yeah. So again, differentiating. So looking not just the whole group, but for individual students as well. Anything else? There's some juicy ones there. We've also got, it goes over the second page as well.
I really like the end bit as well, where she got the students to create charts together as a group and then draw from there, so they can demonstrate that they understood the topic throughout the whole class.
Yeah, Excellent. Yeah. So that phase 3, are we talking about?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I guess like in some of the other examples that we've looked at, there was a use of varied strategies and multimodal tools. So the use of small group, whole group, the hands-on flowchart, direct instruction, the use of a PowerPoint for visual learners. Again, noting the over-shoulder marking that we noted before, and that was via walking around. So, you know, it is so well thought out that they've actually noted all of those very important details. Also, I loved the use of the hook. A hook is really important at the beginning of a lesson. So the use of the time-lapse video, you know, to get the students interested. And also importantly, Walt and Wilf. So you would have been probably familiar with this from your schooling. So Walt, what we're learning to do. So they're the objectives and what I'm looking for, Wilf. So this is something that you're going to be using constantly. And you'll also be doing the I do, we do, you do. So modeling as well. So that's something that you'll come across in your placement, and you'll also be talking about in various units. So ensuring all students are at the same point in their learning by catching up student A. Yeah. So really, you know, that focus on differentiation. Goodness me, so many really purposeful learning teaching strategies and actions that we're learning about today. All right, so moving on. Oh, anything else? Sorry, then I didn't want to cut anyone short. Anything else anyone wanted to share? No? Okay, so the another stimulus for early childhood and primary. This was from a teacher in Broome. So a kindergarten teacher. What did we note here? What were some of the actions from our primary and early childhood students?
I found that she was promoted a lot of independent learning and problem solving. When she was like helping the boy make his hat, he was doing the problem solving himself, and she was just encouraging that and promoting that.
Yeah, it was great. I loved, you know, what an amazing environment to teach in and to learn in as well. There were so many purposeful actions that she noted. Any more that you would like to share?
Yeah, I think it was like a lot of emphasis on how it's about the process, not necessarily the end result, and just promoting confidence and encouragement.
Confidence and encouragement. So very much from the learner's interests. So what we could refer to as an emergent curriculum in early childhood. When I say early childhood, it's not just something that we can use in early childhood. We can use it across all cohorts, even in secondary with inquiry-based project learning. So we're going to learn more about this in the coming weeks. Yeah, so active, creative, inquiry-based. I also loved the way the strategy of getting down to the students level. That was really important. So in an upper primary or a secondary level, that would involve, I guess, leaning down at a student's desk or being in close proximity, touching the student's work, those sorts of things, making those personal connections. And also it was such a diverse group of learners as well. She didn't talk so much about differentiation, but I would imagine she would have had an extremely good understanding of every single one of those children. So, you know, any interests, any needs or specific strengths that she wanted to work on. And she was also scaffolding into different areas of the curriculum. So into arts, into language development, into reading. and really encouraging independence. I think persistence was another area that she was very much into, and children's ownership as well, ownership of their learning, all very important early childhood aspects. Excellent. Okay, so our final stimulus was...
My name's Sarah McPherson.
Sorry, our final stimulus was the secondary. So this was a pre-service teacher in her 4th year of placement. Oh my goodness, secondary people, what did we think? Was it scary? Did anyone find it a bit frightening? It was a bit of a tricky class, wasn't it? What do you think about the way she handled it? Any thoughts? What sort of behavior management strategies did she use? Jake, any thoughts? Did you have an opportunity to watch it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I sort of noticed that, like with one student, he was sort of behaving and she put him in detention, but then she gave him the opportunity to like sort of work it off by, like, if he engaged in the lesson, she would take off minutes off his detention. So
Yeah.
sort of like a punishment, but then sort of reversing it later on if he engaged.
Yeah, there's a comment here. Ben isn't doing Ben's proud. Yeah. Yeah, she did deal with the disruptive behavior. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. But what I really liked is the focus was on the learning, not the behavior. You know, it's kind of like, you know, hitting your head and rubbing your stomach, you know, being able to do 2 things at the one time, like focusing on the behavior and thinking about individual students whilst also, you know, thinking about the content and making sure all of your students are engaged. There is so much to consider in a classroom. So, yeah, she was smiling, energetic. Another thing, her posture. She was in that classroom. She owned the classroom. She stood up straight. She projected her voice. These are teacher actions that are purposeful. If you were to go into that classroom slumped over, not making eye contact with the students, you're going to lose them immediately. You have to have a presence. It's vital. So, you know, having a presence is a teacher action. It's a strategy that you need to work on. It may not come natural, but it's kind of like that fake it till you make it. You really have to go in there and own it. You know, you're not going to put up with anything. And, you know, she did this beautifully. She really did. A lot of the behavior, she ignored it. You could hear the chat in the background. You know, there was a particular student that was trying to disrupt and distract the learning. She didn't take it on. If she had made a big deal about that, that student would have just gone on and on and on, and it would have escalated. But instead she ignored it and it worked. So she used the I do, we do, you do. Also helping individual students. You could hear the in the background students asking questions. Anything else that secondaries noted? Did you note that there was someone taking notes at the side, observing? So she had someone in the classroom. So it wasn't just her and the students, there was someone there evaluating her as well. So that puts a whole nother level there, doesn't it? So that observation as well. Okay. I guess the one thing that I noticed that I thought a teaching action that she could have used is moving around the room a little bit more. I think if she had have gone out there and moved around, that may have helped the behaviour management. Why do you think she didn't do that? Why do you think she stayed at the blackboard, at the whiteboard? Any thoughts? My thoughts is that that was her safe place. You know, she felt confident and comfortable there. Moving out into that group of students as a pre-service teacher, you know, possibly wasn't feeling quite comfortable, but an experienced teacher would have gone out, engaged with the students, as I said before, touched their work, walked amongst the students so that they knew exactly what they were doing. We refer to this as withedness. So I guess it's like having eyes in the back of your head, being able to at any moment know exactly what every student is doing and deal with the situation using a range of behavior management strategies. So she used positive reinforcement, I think. I noted that, but you know, there are other strategies that she could have used as well. Okay, so reflecting on the actions and considerations from the 3 stimuli, I asked you to collate the data you've collected into a Venn diagram. So early childhood and primary would have had one that was different to secondary. So those of you who are watching the video at home, the clip at home, I would like you to do the same. Make sure you fill out this Venn diagram. So hopefully everyone has them there, or at least you would have your notes from what we've just gone through from each of the clips, of the different teacher actions from each of the clips. So the aim of this task is to compare and contrast the 3 different stimuli and the teacher practices that you noticed in each. So I guess we're looking at the similarities and differences with the lesson plan and the actual teaching that we noticed. Does everyone understand what we have to do? Okay, so I'm going to put you back into your breakout groups, and there's going to be mixed groups, and this is great. So there'll be early childhood and primary and secondary as well, hopefully. So I want you to find out what the similarities and differences are. I think you'll be quite surprised how similar the teaching actions and the strategies used across cohorts really were. Okay, are we ready to go? Need to take a screenshot, or you're referring to the PowerPoint? Maybe take a screenshot with your camera or with your phone or something, just to make sure you know what you need to focus on. I'll give you a moment to do that. I always find that's the best way to do it. Then you don't have to refer to the PowerPoints. Actually, I don't. Yeah, this one was on your preparation PowerPoint. So you could refer to the PowerPoint if you needed. Okay, I'm just going to check the chat. It's a bit of a tongue twister before I open up. Okay, all right. Opening the rooms. And to those of you who are watching the recording, while everyone's gone off into their breakout groups, I would like you to see if you can do some comparing and contrasting. So what is unique or different about the lesson plan, I guess, as opposed to the examples of teacher practice? Okay, I'm going to pause the recording and off you go. Recording. Okay, so everyone is coming back from their breakout groups, and welcome back to those of you who are watching the recording. Hopefully you would have had the opportunity to have a think about what's unique or different about the examples of teacher practice, the similarities and the differences, and I guess across the lesson plan as well. Because I guess when we plan, it often can be very different to what we implement for so many reasons. Things could go pear-shaped, as I mentioned before, or the students just may not be engaged. So you need to change direction. Okay, so who would like to share? Isabella, you had started, you had some interesting points to share in terms of similarities and differences.
Yes, that was for secondary teaching. And I found the most sort of similarities between the lesson plan and the first video because she was they were both sort of really interacting with their class, asking questions, not just leading the lesson, but also letting the kids bounce off ideas and create their own sort of views in answering sort of things. But also, again, with the confidence thing, being able to be confident with the class and control the class without having these answers getting out of hand.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing.
That's excellent. So, you know, that questioning technique is so important. So using open-ended questions, using inquiry-based questions, so encouraging students to investigate, to understand in more depth, to reflect on prior knowledge. How many times did prior knowledge come up? I think it was across all of them, wasn't it? Prior knowledge, understanding students' prior knowledge and working with that is really important. Anything else that we noticed? Isabella? Not really.
There were the two big differences between the videos. I did find was like that control of the classroom. Even though she did really well to ignore it, and because she was that sort of pre-service teacher, that is quite daunting. And they're always going to act up because you are new, and you know that seems funny. But there was definitely more of an authority in the first video, where she just didn't put up with anything that wasn't allowed in her classroom, things like that. Whereas the second sort of pre-service teacher hadn't sort of made that impression on the students as of yet. So she was still, they were still very much like testing the boundaries in regards to like their behaviour and attitude towards actually learning and behaving.
Yeah. Now, some really, really good points there, Isabella. I think when you go into your placement learning environments, some of you may walk in there and you'll think, oh my goodness, these students, these learners are just perfect. I hope I get a classroom like this when I start teaching. And the reality will be is that that classroom, that learning environment is like that because of the huge amount of thoughtful and purposeful strategies that that teacher has used right from the beginning of the year. So all of those strategies and techniques to get the learners to the point that they are when you see them. So it's very important that we use our observation strategies. So what we see and what we hear to understand why the students are engaged, why the students are behaving in a way that you think is favourable. So that will also involve having discussions with your supervising teacher as well. And it will also involve looking at the policies and procedures in the school or the learning context, the prior to school context, about their behaviour management policies. So each school will be very different, each context will be different, and you need to develop an understanding of that. And as you progress through different placements, you'll realise that each teacher will have a different style as well. Some teachers may use a really loud voice and, you know, that may work, and other teachers may use a very quiet voice. And again, that may work because the students need to use a quiet voice as well so that they can hear them. All sorts of strategies that you're going to see. It's going to be extremely exciting. Okay, so I guess another area that I noticed that was very common across the majority of the lesson plans and practices was differentiation So differentiation for individual students, as we said before, that use of prior knowledge, multimodal, so using lots of different strategies and multimodal tools to engage students, scaffolding as well in those early childhood and primary, use of objectives, and I think, was anyone quite shocked by the level of detail in the lesson plans? It's a lot of work. So that's why we say when you go on to placement, make sure that you have time off work, because you can't be working and doing your placement at the same time. That's just not going to be possible. When I did my placement way back when, many years ago, I actually moved back home with my mum and dad so they could look after me. So I could, and also because I wasn't able to earn money either. So, you know, there's lots of considerations as an education student, especially I know some of you, many of you who are doing online learning are probably doing so because you do have many other commitments. So you really need to start thinking about how you're going to manage that. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that it's going to be an easy ride. It will be busy, really busy. So you need to be prepared for that. Any questions about that? Not at this point? Not thinking about placement yet? Early childhood students should be, because your first placement, your first kindergarten placement is when? Do you know?
August, September.
Correct. So your kindergarten placement, it will be August, September. So that will be in EUB, what's the name of it? 140. So our lovely early childhood pre-service teachers, they will get an extra placement over the course of their degree, because to be registered as an early childhood teacher, yes, semester 2, Ben, to be registered as an early childhood teacher, you also need to have a placement in a birth to 2 learning environment. So that will be next year, EUB 241. So thanks, Emma, 23rd of August to the 10th of September. So if anyone has any questions about that early childhood students, if you're concerned about it, or you want to talk about what the expectations are, or anything at all, it all will be revealed in that unit. But if you'd like to talk about it, I'm happy to have a chat to you about that. That is my area. And for those of you that are doing EUB 241, the birth to 2, I will be your unit coordinator in that as well. It's a fabulous experience being in that environment. You learn so much, especially about child development and observation. This is where your observation skills need to be top notch. And so we're going to do a lot of practice to assist you there. Okay, so goodness me, moving on. We've got a bit of a, we do this each week. Teacher think, just so that breaking down and having a think about the tasks that you've completed and the reasons behind, the thoughtful and purposeful reasons behind what we've actually done today in this workshop. Any thoughts around that? In what ways were the workshop activities relevant to your needs, interests and learning goals? Let's have someone who hasn't shared yet. Come on, it's a good opportunity. You need to speak up. You need to start thinking and acting like a teacher, and that involves engaging and sharing your insights. There are no wrong answers here. So in what ways were the workshop activities relevant to you? How did they help you? None of them were helpful? Matt, any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess it was just getting us started in looking and observing critically. So
Mhm.
it's a good bit of practice so we can think about what we need in the future.
Yeah, excellent. Anyone else? Nikki?
I
Yeah,
just,
putting you
I,
on the spot.
I just thought it was really interesting to have it broken down like that, because I wasn't looking, I've looked at some videos before and I wasn't looking with that in my mind of really analysing what they were doing. So I found that really helpful.
Yeah. What about Emma? What are your thoughts? Emma Hilton?
Sorry, a few Emmas. I wasn't sure which one you were after.
That's okay.
I just found it really helpful just to gain that classroom insight. Just, I mean, you picture it in your head. So to have a visual representation, I found that really helpful.
Yeah, excellent. Emma Keast, let's go back to you.
I guess with the Venn diagrams as well, because I've always been sort of a list person. So it's kind of, I think it's cool because you can morph a lot of things together and find the connection. Yeah, because I haven't really done those before, so I thought that was quite helpful.
Yeah. So I guess going on, that was a really good point, Emma. The Venn diagram, I guess this is a possible graphic organizer that you could use in your assessment task. Me personally, I probably wouldn't use it. And I think one of the reasons would be is at the aim of the task or the expectations isn't really to compare and contrast. So that's not a big focus. I guess in the mind map, you could compare and contrast by joining links to the bubbles and that kind of thing. If your brain thinks that way, if you want to compare and contrast and you can see lots and lots of connections between the representations, by all means do that. That would actually be thinking even deeper, I think, than what is required in the assessment task. But hey, it's all about what suits you, how you learn, how you think, how you construct knowledge. So it's all about what suits you the best. So what might you gain from watching teachers from other sectors? So we talked about, early childhood, primary and secondary. Why do you think that's the case? Any thoughts? Ben, haven't heard from you yet. Ben Whedon, why do you think we looked across cohorts?
It's just helpful, I think, knowing the differences, even if you're not looking for stuff you should do, like you can look at the differences between the different styles of teaching.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think it also illustrates not just the differences, but more importantly, the similarities. I do believe, and this is just my personal belief, that if you are a teacher, if you're a good teacher, if you've developed those strategies, those understandings, I think you can teach in any space. I really do. And it's all about, it's not a set of specific skills. It's many skills for the right context and the right situation. So I guess being a practitioner is a teaching practitioner is about using a variety of skills and understanding how they're going to work in different contexts with individual students. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. Anything else that anyone wanted to share? So Crystal, thank you, has said being able to see these practices in a real class setting. Yeah, that's important. And you're going to have more of that when you go out on placement. Okay, so I've got some provocations here. There are 4 provocations on the slide. And these relate to the practice theory divide that I mentioned in the lecture. So hopefully you would have had the opportunity to watch the lecture prior to this. I want you to choose one provocation. I want you to choose one of them and jot down some dot points ready to share. And I really want you to share in this. This is important. I want you to think about it. This is about thinking in depth. So you really need to, I guess, about for you personally, what's important. I'll give you a few moments. So those of you at home can do the same. Listening to the recording. You could choose one, or you can ponder on them all. Sorry, skipped ahead. Okay, someone's missed that. What you need to do is to choose one of these provocations and write some dot points about them. So you might choose, I wonder if the teacher is the expert in the room. So you would think about that, have a little think, and write down some dot points ready to share your insights with the rest of the group. All good? Give me a thumbs up if you understand now. Excellent. So just one or two dot points. You don't need to go into depth. Well, you do need to go into depth, but I think focusing on one particular point would be good. So a few more moments, and I'm going to ask someone to share. Okay. Let's start with Audrey. Audrey, which one did you choose? You there, Audrey? Okay. Jody. If you could unmute your mic and share what you have, which one you looked at. Nope. Okay. Nikki.
I chose, I wonder which comes first, practice or theory.
Excellent.
And I said theory does need to come first because it's good to have that instruction manual. But having said that, I do think that practice is the most important thing.
Yeah.
For example, before I had kids, I thought I knew it all because I'd watched Super Nanny and read a few books, but then I had to figure out that that didn't really help me in the real world. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you think you know something and then it changes, doesn't it? You know, even theories change. Well, often they do. Let's see. I'm going to see some of these students that are hiding. Joey, we haven't heard from Joey yet. What are your thoughts, Joey? Which one did you choose?
I choose the second one.
Okay. That's a really good one to choose. I wonder if the teacher is the expert in the room. What did you think?
I think maybe teacher is the expert in some aspects of knowledge, but actually teacher also learn from students, and yeah, while students are learning from teacher.
Fantastic. That's excellent. Really good observation. And I guess also the person or the people that know the students best are the parents. They're the expert on their children, really, aren't they? So this is why we have to work so closely with parents. Excellent. Some really good points there, Joey. Thank you. What about Annika? Yeah. Nope. Okay, let's see. Dolores with the beautiful cat. Which one did you choose? Nope. Okay. All right. I am going to go back up the top and I'm going to ask Molly. Which one did you choose, Molly?
I was going to volunteer as well, but I chose the same one as Joey, the I had kind of the same points. I said to an extent they have the knowledge that they're sharing with their students, but they also learn from the students as well. They're only like the expert in a certain topic. They're not experts of the students at all.
Yeah.
So they need to collaborate with other people and like learn from them too.
Excellent. Yeah, a really good point. Emma Hilton?
I am exactly the same as Molly, who just went.
Okay.
I've done the same one. Yeah, you would hope you'd want to be the expert in the room, but as you've said, parents are the expert on their children. Children are experts on being children. As a teacher, we're not the expert on that. But yeah, it seems to be a mutual thing. I think we can all learn from each other. Similar concept.
Anyone else want to share something? Thank you very much.
I did number 4 and I just said like theory is the foundational knowledge and the practice just building upon that knowledge.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to put the theory into motion to gain a solid understanding. And I think that also applies to the first question as well.
Definitely. Thank you. Very good. Very insightful. Thank you very much. Dolores, that's not a problem, Dolores. That's fine. You think that practice comes first, then teachers relate theory to that. Yeah, everyone's different. Everyone is different in how they work. All right. So I just wanted to go a little bit more in depth about this and look at some research as one of the last things we're going to do today. And I think the problem with teacher as practitioner is that when we critique this particular representation, there is often a focus on what is rather than what could be or what might be. So by that, Hobson, a UK researcher, he presented findings from a study of pre-service secondary student teachers of their evaluations of their teaching studies, so their university studies. So his findings, they actually suggested that some teachers were unconvinced about the value of the theoretical components of their training courses. So instead, they wanted specific procedures and strategies that they could go into the classroom or the learning environment and implement. They wanted the time to implement these together with feedback and some guidance in how they were implementing them. So what they were looking for was practical skills and practical advice. And this is, it's important. It's vital that we have these practical strategies. But these students had very minimal interest in the knowledge and rationale behind the strategies that they were given or used. So Hobson referred to these students as proceduralist apprenticeship learners. So also though, in contrast, there were some pre-service teachers in this study who valued and could apply theory to practice. So he referred to these students as understanding orientated learners. So they believed that it was important to learn or gain a repertoire of teaching techniques and strategies. So they also thought that it was important to develop a critical understanding of the educational system and educational practice. So an in-depth understanding of teaching and learning, and importantly, to understand why certain teaching strategies and learning strategies may or may not be appropriate in different contexts. So why strategies work for some students or some learners and not others. So they really wanted to be able to critically understand and to be able to apply these strategies in different contexts with different students. So here is a quote from an understanding orientated learner. I'll give you a chance to have a read. So basically, there needs to be a clear connection. So theory and practice need to work together. I guess because they stem from and influence each other. I think if we have a look at a final quote from Hobson's study, have a read. This is another understanding orientated learner. So if we just focus on teachers' practices rather than our values and our beliefs that we're talking about in this unit, we're really limiting ourselves. And I think it's important for us to understand that theory underpins all practice. So as a teacher, or as a pre-service teacher, we need to question practices. We need to embrace those in-depth theoretical understandings to make deliberate, thoughtful, and purposeful decisions. So all of those teacher actions that we noted today, they were purposeful, they were thoughtful, and they were deliberate. And there is theory behind them. So it's all about improving your practice and focusing on child and student outcomes. And it takes that critical understanding and evaluation to be able to do this. Okay, so after this session, or watching the recording, I want you to go back to Blackboard, and I've added a Padlet there. So this is where I want you to add one new teaching practice that you learnt in the Zoom session or from watching the recording. So in my face-to-face class, I got students to use Post-it notes instead. So this is an exit ticket, like we saw on one of our, or two of our examples today. So basically it's for me to understand what you're learning, and for you to evaluate your learning as well, to think about what you've actually gained from a particular learning experience. I also want you to have a really good think about those teacher practices, and you might want to add some of those to your fishbone as well. Okay, so does anyone have any questions? Any questions about their assessment task or about the Zoom sessions? Anything that you wanted to ask me?
Yeah, I just had one.
Excellent. Who am I speaking to?
Jake.
Jake. Hi, Jake.
Well, actually, a couple of questions about the assessment.
Good.
Just the first one was with the visual organizer, like if, for example, if we were to do the fishbone template, would we have to do like 4 separate fishbone templates for the component, like one for the lecturer and one for teacher, practitioner, etc.?
Yes. So you'd have 4 fishbones.
Okay, cool.
Like you would have 4 mind maps or 4 Venn diagrams. So one for each particular representation.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And I was just also wondering about the like the content and the details we put in. Does it have to be like mini paragraphs, or can we do like dot points and stuff like that? I wasn't too sure like how like much wording is required and like how to incorporate like images and stuff like that.
Okay. Did you have the opportunity to watch the lecture this week?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So I gave an example. So that's pretty much what one section would look like. So you would have phrases, you'd have some words, probably more phrases, and then you'd have a few sentences. You might also have some dot points, depending on what particular, what you're focusing on. So the amount of detail that you saw in that one particular area, that would be, that would be a good amount. Obviously, if you wanted to go into more depth, then you would get a higher grade. So what I showed you would be, I think I said it would be maybe a 5 or so, but to get higher than that, it would be more depth. And it's not about what it looks like. It's not about adding clips or drawings. If you wanted to add a meme or something that really meant something for you in that, in what you were doing, by all means do that, but you won't be graded on that. You're graded on the content.
Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
No worries. Really good questions. Anyone else?
Sorry, with that, should you be referencing different quotes and stuff to put in there as well?
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent question. So I would use minimal quotes. So a quote is something that you verbatim. So I would put it into your own words. And yes, you would be using in-text references. So in each of those points, you would use in-text references. Not everything will be referenced, because some of it might be a reflection about a teacher that you had in your schooling that really influenced you. So it might be something personal, or it might be about a representation from social media, from the media, or something that you wanted to share that represents what a teacher is. But you will also have representations, like, for example, the study that I unpacked. You could use that. The reference is in the lecture, the end of the lecture slides. You could reference that if you wanted to, if you were talking about, what we talked about today, which you could. So you would use lecture and workshop content as well. But you wouldn't say reference Angela week 2. You would actually look for some research around that particular area. You would look to your textbook. You would look at the research in your textbook and then cite some of that research as well. So you would look at, who completed the research and then cite that in text and in your reference list. Excellent question, Angela.
Thank you so much.
Clarify?
Yes, that did. Thank you.
Anyone else? Excellent. These are good questions. what I'd like you to do as well, if you did ask a question, go and enter it on the Padlet. So make sure you go and have a look at the Padlet, because you know, Mia's onto that. She responds to that regularly, and there might be questions that are relevant to you as well. Anything else?
Can I just ask, I based my mind map off the example that was given in a lecture, where it had the like representation of, well, this was just your example. So yours was like a lecture, and then you had different breakouts from it, and it was in sort of one whole picture. Do we need you to do 4 separate pictures? Because I ended up doing like teacher, representations of teacher, and then all the different subheadings around that with more subheadings and information.
Yeah,
so
no,
it was,
I get what you mean. So as we said before, so if you, that example, I used a mind map. So you would have 4 mind maps. One teacher as learner, 1 teacher as practitioner, 1 teacher as change agent, 1 teacher as professional. Yeah.
And can they relate back to like representations of teacher in the center? Because I know that's what you had as your, or that was the example that was there.
So in the center would be representations of teachers. So you'd have each of those mind maps coming off that. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Does that answer your
Thank
question?
you. Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good question. See, all of these are wonderful. No questions are trivial. They're all good. Okay. So make sure that you complete that exit ticket, please. We can see it's important for me to see what you're learning and also for you to share as well. So make sure you complete that. Okay, I'm going to turn the recording off now. So those of you watching the recording at home, if you do have any questions about assessment, please make sure you pop them on the Padlet, and Mia will attend to those very shortly. Thank you very much.